So, our mission, received from Valencia, is to rescue the knights right up here. We actually have to arrive, and this is a turn limit chapter, so killing most of the enemies is optional, including the boss. Here's the boss, by the way, Ricard, no relation to the character from Shadow Dragon. He has an elixir like most bosses at this point, but it shouldn't be too hard to steal it from him if you have a decent amount of speed on Volk. He also has parity, so parity is a skill that's a lot more useful for the enemy than it is for you. You won't be able to use skills against this guy, and it won't really affect him because he's not benefiting from any supports or skills of his own. And he usually won't benefit from terrain either, so parity costs him nothing but costs you a lot. We also have a few Wyvern Lords that are actually, I suppose, somewhat strong. Some other enemies in the way, a few ballistas, the iron variety, that have pretty decent range on them. So if you're sending flyers down here, you might want to make sure they have the full guard. A few warriors, snipers. We'll be seeing more promoted enemies at this point, though there's still quite a few unpromoted. There's a swordmaster over here. Now, you might notice that we have villagers to save, but no bandits. That will change. Oh, and speaking of things that change, you want to run as far away from the starting position as possible this chapter. There's kind of a jerk move they pull on you later into it. So, scrolling back up here, we have Joffrey here. His stats aren't too bad. You don't want him to waste that Brave Lance, though. Although, I feel like the Brave Lance gets fully repaired when he joins you, because obviously Joffrey is recruitable. Not in this chapter itself, though. He'll only join after it's completed. And he is the second bearer of the Paragon skill in this game. Not that it will really do anything for him while he's an NPC. Also, remember how I said that Crimea likes Lance and Bow Paladins? He happens to be one of them. There are also some Cavaliers here with a pretty decent assortment of weapons. A Halberdier with an Elixir. Two snipers with longbows. If they get crits, they can actually do pretty decently here. And one of the most interesting NPCs in the game to me, an NPC Valkyrie. This is, I believe, the one and only Valkyrie in this game besides Mist. And it has higher strength than she's likely to have at this point, although level 17 Valkyrie is still kind of strong. This Valkyrie is pretty cool. It's got a physics staff, a men staff. She actually tends to do pretty well in this chapter. I always found that kind of interesting, how Joffrey had an NPC Valkyrie with him, because, again, you don't see that very often. So we only have 11 deployment slots here, so we're down from before. Okay, I might have to kick out a few characters here, because I still want you for your support with Jill. I actually want to bring Volk. There's a very specific reason for this. It's mainly to show a support conversation, although I could probably get this support later on. But that would require deploying. There's a support conversation. It's Volk's one and only support in the game, and the character he supports with joins midway through this chapter, so having him will automatically unlock their C support. Might have to deploy him then. Maybe not Mordecai, though. I kind of want Ranulf as well, but let's see. Stefan is very good, but maybe I won't need him here, because I've said earlier, but I don't actually want him getting to level 20, because it's less of a priority for him to get transfer bonuses for me. Okay, so let's reposition now. Volk is, again, pretty much worthless to me in this chapter, but I'm mostly bringing him for supports. Jill's gonna fly all the way over this side as quickly as she can. I guess I can send my other fast-moving character down that path as well. Rayson, obviously, I want you. Gatry's gonna go there. Guess Neffen... not selecting the right spot. Soren can go forward. Ranulf probably needs to shove some people. Leth will also need to shove some people. I think this is a pretty good setup. So, let's move out. And we had a little bit of dialogue with the enemy here. They're not exactly refugees. They're fully armored knights. Oh no! Ambush spawning reinforcements against us! Now how do you feel? Yeah, you should be pretty freaked out right now. Or you're actually liking it. I find this guy has one of the more memorable personalities out of most of the generic bosses in this game. We're thinking we don't want you to die. even though he can pretty much handle himself, like I said, on this mode. So from what I've heard, I haven't actually seen what this chapter looks like on Maniac mode, but from what I hear, this chapter's actually really infamous among Japanese fans, because on Maniac, it's apparently... I forgot to... Do you have... You have an extra L-Fire Tome. Good. So, Supply Convoy Raisin strikes again. I forgot to equip Soren properly in this chapter. Hopefully shouldn't be too bad. But, as I was saying, so this chapter is almost mimetically infamous in the Japanese fandom, apparently, because on Maniac it's supposed to be pretty hard, and I can guess why. I feel like Joffrey and his NPCs, they can survive pretty well on normal or hard, but on Maniac, with all enemies promoted and probably a massive number of them, I feel like getting to Joffrey in time is going to be incredibly difficult on that mode. You know how Fire Emblem is with chapters where you have to protect an NPC who starts away from your starting position? Cough, Hector Hard Mode, Battle Before Dawn, cough. Yeah, Battle Before Dawn is still my favourite chapter in Fire Emblem 7, but I can fully understand why people would hate it on the higher difficulties. And admittedly, it's been a very long time since I played that chapter, so... I might as well have it go a little bit further. It's been a very long time since I played that chapter, and maybe if I played it again now, I might hate it, I don't know, but I just always liked the way that everything came to a head in the story there, and I also love the way that, I probably shouldn't say why I love that chapter, because it's a bit of a spoiler for that game. Speedbring 4K is actually better than the Silver Sword. I guess I can just show what the Silver Sword looks like, though. And here's where shoving can be useful, though first I'll need to make sure that Mist is not in any danger. But yeah, I know a lot of people really don't like that chapter, but I always personally thought it was okay. Gonna go ahead and confirm the objectives after this, because there's something that I'm pretty sure might make this chapter even worse on Maniac, but not 100% certain whether it's, Okay, so all you have to do is exceed 15 turns. I thought you would game over if Joffrey died, because that's, I mean, the whole point of this chapter is to rescue him. But I guess if he dies here, he doesn't, like, he's actually dead, so you won't be able to recruit him. And that must be why Japanese players find this really annoying. Let's just move you in extra space. If I do this, will Ike moving expose Raisin to attack? It probably will, now that I think about it. Except, most likely only from that Cavalier. Yeah, that Cavalier is definitely going to be able to reach Raisin. Yeah. That Myrmidon won't, though, so as long as Ike gets rid of this Cavalier now... No damage and only a 17% hit rate. Even worse under true hits. That's embarrassing. There are a lot of things that, from what I've said of Maniac mode, I really don't like, but one thing that I do is I love the fact that all enemies are promoted starting with Chapter 18. Because, just seriously, the unpromoted enemies at this point are just no threat to you at all. It's another reason why I consider Path of Radiance to be one of the easiest in the series. It's because just enemy stats are really terrible. I still really like this game, though. It's definitely enjoyable, but I guess one thing that does hurt it a little bit in terms of my list of favorites in the series is that... Also, yeah, this is annoying. We do have the Valkyrie there. We do have a guy with an elixir too. But yeah, is that it does not have very much in the way of challenge later in the game. I do like that almost every character is at least somewhat viable in Path of Radiance, though. I mean, sure, Paladins are completely broken, and, you know, if you're playing efficiently, you'll just use all mounted classes, but There aren't that many characters who are just truly awful in this game. I feel like everyone is at least usable to some extent. Okay, now you can use Brave Axes. The genealogy had your characters getting very overpowered by the end of the game, but you also fought some pretty overpowered enemies. And good thing you're equipping a ranged weapon. Although I hope Zenobia has enough uses left. Well, guess it did. But that might have broken it. Not quite, actually. Huh. And Radiant Dawn is similar, I find, to Genealogy, where you get very overpowered, but the enemy stats in the late game are quite high in that one, so it's not really all that easy, even towards the end of the game. Because that's what I usually find with Fire Emblem games. In most of them, the end of the game is easier than the beginning. Except Conquest, which remained pretty consistently difficult right up until the end. Oh. You know, earlier in this playthrough I was thinking, why haven't NPCs been critting more often? One did there, but at a time where it didn't matter. Yeah, Joffrey's NPCs also love to go in the heal hedge, or just regular hedges. Okay, I'm glad you're doing that. Again, I still feel like his Brave Lance is fully repaired when he joins, but better safe than sorry. Just don't like the idea of him wasting that. As you can see, though, Joffrey's NPCs are actually, well, I say that and then one of them misses. But they're actually pretty capable of handling themselves in this chapter, but of course on Maniac they're obviously not, so I don't even want to think about what this chapter is like on Maniac mode. You've probably got to rush to them with a flyer very, very quickly. Also, the fact that you didn't seem to have any sympathy for the fact that your brother was about to die. I know that's kind of his job to protect the princess, but still. So, way to guilt trip the player if they somehow let these two die. Which can happen, and it does actually affect a lot of dialogue. Something I haven't pointed out yet is that the three of them, Joffrey, Lucia, and Bastion, there's a lot of scenes with them from this point on, and from that, there's a lot of variations depending on what combination of them live and what combination of them die. So, like, for every scene, there's, like, just Bastion and Joffrey, just Joffrey and Lucia, only one of them, all three of them dead, all three of them alive. But anyway, Lucia and Bastion have now joined us. Lucia is not that great. And it only takes one look at her base stats to see that. Despite joining much later and at a higher level, all her base stats are worse than Stefan's except for magic and luck. For this point in the game, base 15 strength is not going to be hurting a lot of things, and that base skill and speed is awful for a level 12 Swordmaster. Her growths are pretty high, but she just doesn't have enough levels to make use of them, and every other Swordmaster will be better than her by the end of the game anyway. Heck, they'll be a lot better than her now. Maybe there'll be some hope in her starting skills. Oh, look, it's Parody, one of the worst skills in the game. Lucia's redeeming qualities are few and far between. The first is surprisingly good magic for a physical attacker, meaning that she can use magic swords decently well. The second is having Earth Affinity. Earth Affinity is always pretty good. And the third is having some pretty decent bond supports. Other than that, Lucia is really not all that impressive. Bastion is a lot like Devdon to me. I really love his character, I just wish he was a lot better in terms of stats. Sadly, Bastion may be even worse than Lucia is. He joins late at a very high level with very disappointing base stats for a promoted Sage, especially in speed. 16 base speed this late into the game, you're not going to be doubling a lot. 19 base magic means he doesn't really hit all that hard either. Much like Lucia, Bastion has steep competition from another pre-promote who joined earlier. Khalil had equal to or better base stats than Bastion, and she joins earlier and at almost half his level. Bastion's growths are decent, but he has so few levels to gain that his average stats at level 20 are pretty terrible as well. But hey, maybe there'll be some hope in his skills. Oh look, Corrosion, one of the worst skills in the game. Oh, and he's a knife sage, so he doesn't even have staff utility. Though, for what it's worth, Bastion is the best knife sage in the game, so that's something. About the only other redeeming qualities he has is starting with an A in wind magic, but given how bad Tornado is, that really isn't saying much. I prefer Khalil's B's in everything. And him having surprisingly high weight for a Sage, so he can work as a shove bot if you have a filled deployment slot, I guess. It's really sad when I think that's probably the most useful thing he can do. A shame, I really like Bastion's character, but he's really not that good. And I don't know why you have a Laguz guard, but having a second one of those is going to help later in the game. Unfortunately, Bastion is not really going to help much later in the game. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to just trade your Elwyn Tome to Soren. Well, at least you can actually use Meteor. That might actually help now I think about it. Though I don't really want to waste the experience for killing a promoted enemy on you. And that is a bit of a waste of a use of a Meteor Tome, but it's going to mean that I can fight those unpromoted knights up there with more people. Meanwhile, Lucia is going to go up here because she actually is kind of useful for something later on in this chapter. That is support range of Ike. I forgot to trade Elwyn to Soren, dang it. Let's go ahead and do that. And then I might have to use Racing, unfortunately. Civil Lance doesn't quite one-shot most of you. Except I am doubling you, so might as well go for this. Wyvern Riders, at least on the enemy side, have pretty bad speed in this game. Also kind of interesting how Dayan Wyvern Riders have grey Wyverns, whereas the Benyon ones have red Wyverns. Then there was that random one in the tutorials who had a blue Wyvern, and that's the only blue Wyvern you'll ever see in this game. Even though I guess Cormac rode a blue Wyvern back in Sacred Stones. Also Heath would have in... Actually, was Heath's Wyvern blue? I seem to remember that it was kind of brownish in that game. Heath is one of the few Wyvern Riders in the series that I don't find myself using all that much for some reason. It's sort of weird. Alright, Ranulph needs to get very far away from the starting point of the map, I just realized. As for everyone else, doesn't seem like anyone's really badly in need of healing, so I might as well... Alternatively, Mist could probably... Yes, she can actually kill that warrior. While that's fun to see, I'd rather her just... But it is more sword experience. If I get her to a C, I can actually use an arm scroll, and then she'll have a B rank, and she'll be able to use... I kind of like to see her crit animation at some point too, but... And then she'll be able to use magic swords, which I am actually saving Tanith's Sonic Sword for. I normally keep that on Tanith, because Tanith is pretty effective with it. Can't quite reach that Wyvern Lord, unfortunately. And let's... Is that Blongor? Yeah, no, you can't quite reach from there. I had a feeling it only had one use left. Yeah, I thought that wasn't enough damage either. Except that happened. The red hand axes reminded me of I actually had a forged hand axe in Radiant Dawn that I called Daggers, who I didn't actually get in Xenoblade 2 until pretty late. He was one of the last ones I needed. Because I think I was on one of the... What does that call it? A seed. The, like, the rare blade rarity tables that had him as pretty low. It was really interesting having someone actually show me those tables, because it's kind of cool to know that whenever you do a new playthrough of that game, you're probably going to get different rare blades. Also explains why a lot of people end up getting the same rare blades as each other, because you end up getting in the same table as others. But I was pretty surprised to find out that Zenobia was really rare on everything. Because, again, she was the second rare blade I ever got. And also, I always thought the system worked like Heroes, where it's a fixed chance of getting a rare blade, and once you do get one, it's a fixed chance out of any of the possible rare blades it could be. But it was actually not quite that. It was more like each individual rare blade has its own fixed chance of showing up. Or rather, it works like there's a pool of rare blades, and I need to shove you, but I can easily do that. And every rare blade has a certain chance of being added to the pool, but then it goes into what type of core crystal you used, and if you use a rare or a legendary, and there is at least one rare blade in the pool, you're guaranteed to get a rare blade. But if it's a common, I think it's only a 33% chance, even if there is one in the pool. I forget the exact specifics, but it's kind of interesting, I guess. Kicks McGee served me well, but unfortunately I will have to drop them probably pretty soon. I like how Silver Axes look in this game, though. But I've said before that I like how most of the weapon types look in this game. Yeah, I thought you'd not go for Mist because of the Shade skill. That one time I was talking about Shade not working was actually only because Mist happens to be the only one that Crow's range, because I forgot that bird tribes only have 8 movement in this game. Well, bird tribes that aren't herons only have 8 movement in this game, not 9. I guess that does give the on-foot beast tribes something going for them. It's also kind of weird that Wyvern Riders stand in the river to fight other Wyvern Riders in rivers. They did something very cool with the animations for mounted classes in Radiant Dawn, but I'll cover that when we get there, because I don't really want to spoil it. It's pretty awesome. I like the animations in Radiant Dawn a lot, and... Ow. Okay, well, one casualty on Joffrey's side. And they are about to get swarmed by some soldiers, but... like I said, it's nothing they can't handle. This is probably one of the chapters that's the most changed between Hard and Maniac now that I think about it, because suddenly we go from Joffrey's NPCs being perfectly capable of protecting themselves to being just, you don't even want to even think about them. Except Joffrey's snipers have been pretty bad in this run for me so far. I'm a little disappointed. They do not live up to the legacy of a certain archer who... Again, I'll just mention, I actually really hate that meme. But not because it's overused or anything, but because more that... Yeah, one of you has a hand axe. And yeah, this is the reason why you need to save these villagers, because there are going to be bandits later, including a killer axe berserker, which is kind of scary. But that one thing that Lucia can do in this chapter that I was mentioning, it's fight these bandits. She actually does a pretty decent job, especially if she's on a thicket. Just gotta watch out for that berserker. And I think we're getting far enough away from our starting position that we should be fine at this point. But yeah, a lot of people think that Radiant Dawn's animations were... Well, I mean, that was one of the big, I'll probably end up discussing this once we actually get there, but... Radiant Dawn was one of the last straws back in the day that made me totally boycott all most game reviews. Nowadays, I really only trust YouTube reviews, but just... Radiant Dawn was just... It's not so much that I'm angry that critics didn't give Radiant Dawn good reviews, because there are plenty of things you can criticize about that game. It's just they criticized it for all the wrong reasons. I'm sure I've said this many, many times, but they just... all the reviews of Radiant... I think there was only one review of Radiant Dawn that I think actually criticized the game for legitimate reasons in my book. Saying things like certain characters weren't very useful, some of the villains weren't written all that well, lack of a support system, and things like that. But just about every other review was, oh, the graphics aren't very good. This could have easily just been a GameCube game. It doesn't make use of motion controls, therefore it's crap. It's just... And what's also weird is that most reviews at the time would slam games for excessively using motion controls, so it was a lose-lose scenario. Okay, that's a longsword. So Titania might want to not go in that guy's range. These trees here are actually impassable, so these cavalry don't have as much movement as you'd think they would. Anyway, I just... what reviewers did with Radiant Dawn was always... just always bugged me. I mean, again, admittedly, I've never really cared very much about graphics in games, but... the only times where I'd really... it's like only when the graphics are just absolutely mind-numbingly behind the times are they ever a problem for me. Like, recently I was just watching the archive of the RPG Limit Break speedrun of Virtual Hyderlight, and that's a game that you can legitimately criticize for its graphics. Doesn't help the fact that that game runs at about 1 frame. No, not even 1 frame per second. The announcers there made a really great joke saying that you measure this game in seconds per frame. It's just, that game is just something to watch. It's amazing. Oh, crap. Speaking of amazing, I'm an amazing idiot for leaving Rayson in range of that ballista. At least he has enough HP to tank 1 hit from it. Also, I guess we'll see a fight. I always found her battle model looked a bit weird. Probably need to physic Titania soon. Wait, I just thought of something. Did I just get rid of Mist's physics staff without giving her a fresh one? I was planning on giving her a fresh one, but I must have forgot. You're dodging a lot, at least. And actually, Titania has soul. She could probably recover that HP on her own. Yeah, that village is going to be saved very soon. Don't really need to worry too much. I'm just trying to think, when was the last time in this playthrough that Gatry took damage from anything physical? I'm curious to know, because I think it was a very, very, very long time ago. I would appreciate more Luna's Gatry, though. I feel like Gatry's got a bit skill screwed in this run. Well, that's not Luna, but it'll do. The thing with that Berserker is that I really like to be the one to get the first hit on him, because obviously it's really not good when... Okay, there's Luna. But it's obviously really bad if he gets a crit on you. Either that or I can try attacking him at range. And meanwhile, Joffrey's knights aren't doing so well. Maybe I should get Jill to them faster. I'm also surprised the enemies aren't really targeting the Valkyrie very much, but she has stayed out of their ranges a lot. Now, I have to make sure that I don't completely waste Wyvern in 1 chapter, although at this point I can afford to make 1 forge weapon per map, basically. Though I might want to stockpile some silver forge weapons for the trial maps. I keep saying stockpiling things for the trial maps, but some of the trial maps are actually kind of tough. Many of them are much well, I wouldn't really say harder, but much more of a challenge than the main story. But probably because I don't think the trial maps, I mean, they don't have difficulty levels at all, so I'm pretty sure they don't change. What I meant to say there is, because the trial maps don't have difficulty levels, they're probably the same in the Japanese version, and that would mean that one of the trial maps, the one that in this game you unlock by completing the game on hard mode, was actually meant for completing the game on maniac mode. And looking at the enemies there, their stats definitely make sense for maniac mode enemies. If only enemy archers would do this with Shinin. Except this guy is not doubling them and not critting them, so... yeah, these snipers really are terrible. No one's used their elixirs yet either. That's interesting, but you're missing so much. Joffrey could really use leadership stars right about now. In case you don't know, they're a mechanic in some games, including Radiant Dawn, that gives a slight hit and evade bonus to all allies on the map with the same affiliation as the commander, but Radiant Dawn has that mechanic, kind of, but it's also a bit silly because, okay, there's going to be a lot of things we have to fight here soon. And we have to save that village now. Preferably with someone mounted, because otherwise they will be stuck in range of this guy. There's also a ballista there, so I will need to be... I keep saying that, I keep saying I need to be careful, but... you actually will do damage to Gatry. Except... I'm in a position to destroy you, so... yeah. And you need to get Felix, I just realized. I knew there was someone who needed healing. In fact, I might have to rescue Soren. Rescuing with Gatry might not be a bad idea, because Gatry's not going to be doubling most of these enemies anyway. So having his speed lowered really won't do much. Also, Soren is getting water on his... don't even know if he wears shoes. They're more like sort of sandal type things. This is a bit of a waste of a spear, but oh well. The water is just not... oh, that was actually pretty unlucky under true hit. The water is just not touching Nephene's weirdly exposed skin. Huh, that Wyvern Lord can't actually reach Lucia if she go... actually, though, she can't go there at all, because that's a tree. Which now reminds me of... yeah, I've been watching some archive speedruns lately, and one for Breath of the Wild was pretty great because, it involved a certain technique known as the rocket tree. And, yeah, I never knew you could do something like that, and that was pretty funny. Mostly watch that because as much as I don't really like Breath of the Wild myself, it's really interesting from a speedrun standpoint because you have so much freedom. Just the amount of planning that has to go into the routes must be insane. And just the sheer amount of... okay, you do have physics. Now, the question is, do I trust Soren to dodge these Wyvern Lords or not? He does have 64 avoid. And they only have a 100 hit. I think I trust Soren for now. But I need to watch out, because if Mist is the only one a ballista can shoot, then obviously the ballista will be shooting her. Yeah, let's have you visit this. Thankfully, this village won't scream at you if you visit with Lagu's characters. And finally, Crimean citizens who are not idiots. Oh, and I forgot that skill was here. Savior is a fantastic skill. But unfortunately, most of my mounted units and flyers don't have enough capacity for it in this run. But take my word for it, Savior is a fantastic skill. It means that if you're carrying someone with the rescue command, you don't lose skill and speed. Like, their skill is insane for completing chapters quickly. You can just have Marsha rescue Ike, and she won't suffer any speed penalties, and she can just fly around the whole map carrying him, doubling everything. It's great. Let me just see something. I think Bastion can actually fight this guy. Except I traded away his only method of non-extreme ranged combat. Okay, if you get hit by that, that's 31 attack, +1 for weapon triangle, only 10 defense, so you're gonna be taking, like, 20... Although, you won't even be able to use the Silver Lance from there, so you'll be suffering quite a bit less damage. Alternatively, I could just do this and then have Rayson chant and then run. Speaking of Rayson, I just realized he needs to run because... You see, look how awkward Lucia's walking animation is. And her crit is slightly different looking than Stefan's. Also, apparently, Lucia's outfit was supposed to be more oriental looking than other characters in this game, her and Stefan. Speaking of her and Stefan, so... In the art book, I forgot to mention this earlier, but the art book shows concept art of Stefan with blue hair. Originally, Stefan was planned to have blue hair, but they changed it to green when they realized that he looked way too similar to Joffrey and Lucia. If you look at that concept art, you can easily tell. It looks too much like them, so... Understandable they changed that. He'd also be yet another blue-haired sword user in a Fire Emblem game. Guess Volt can go in that one space on the bridge. I didn't even notice you two. The camera didn't even pan for you. Guess you'll go back there. Volk really doesn't need to do anything in this chapter. I'm mostly bringing him supports, like I said. Let's just use a regular steel sword for this. At least Ike is consistently doubling a lot of things now. Enemies don't really have a lot of speed in this game, so Ike not being able to double most things was really embarrassing earlier. Okay, yeah, that could be bad. Let's just do that, even though there's really no point in having you attack with axes anymore in terms of weapon rank building. Please get Soul on one of these. No. Okay. That will probably start... Actually, no, it won't start luring these guys. But it will start luring this ballista. And that's also an iron ballista, not a killer ballista. I don't even think there are any killer ballistas in this chapter. And none of you can get to miss, that's good. The ballista can, but because there are other things in its targeting range, it will probably go for them because she has the shade skill. And I guess I can break this now. Jill has finally graduated from Pliz hits because she actually hits consistently now. A lot of people said I should have given her an Iron Lance earlier. It's funny. I think I mentioned this before, but Steel Lances, I just find... I tend to forget their lower accuracy in this game because most of the times when I use them, they're pretty reliable. The Pliz hits broke. Oh no. I think she can afford to fly over here now. I could be arriving pretty soon if I wanted to. Lethe better be able to survive this. Nah, if you can take that, you can take any of them. That's good, and Soren should be totally safe as well. I'll need to protect Rayson from these guys, though. Well, at least you're drawing attention away from Joffrey's NPCs, who, at this point, need all the help they can get. The game must have heard me talking about how much they suck on Maniac mode, and is determined to prove that they also suck on hard mode. When I called them some of the... they tend to be some of the better green units in this game, and by green unit standards, best in the entire... well, some of the best in the entire series. I'm trying to... oh, well, actually, wait, obviously. Obviously, the best green unit in the entire series would be... FE7 Pent, though I just realized, isn't said green when he's on one of the castles in Fire Emblem 4 Chapter 8. Pretty sure he is, and that would technically make him the best green unit in the series, but FE7 Pent is... Although, admittedly, FE7 Pent is still bad because it means that he kills too many things, and that chapter has a side quest that you unlock by gaining a certain amount of experience in the chapter, so if you're playing for the side quest, you actually have to rescue him early, otherwise he'll ruin your chances of getting it, because he'll just wipe out everything on the map, including both bosses, as I usually see him do. So yes, green units, even when they're good, they're bad. Most of the time. No, don't attack the only Valkyrie in the game who isn't missed! I wonder who this Valkyrie is, actually. Just trying to think if people have tried to give NPCs backstories before in this game, like in fanfics or things like that. I just realized there are probably 313 Archer fanfics out there. In fact, I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say the 313 Archer probably has more fanfics than some characters in Radiant Dawn. Because not a lot of people get much character development in that game. At least not a lot of people who weren't also in Path of Radiance. That is one of the biggest problems of Radiant Dawn. I'm one of the few people who thinks this, but Radiant Dawn is still my second favorite game in the series next to Genealogy, and I still like it a lot more than this game, even though I like this game a lot. Rayson probably transformed a little early thanks to that ballista. Actually, obviously, Nephany needs to get more experience here because she is a little bit behind. Also, she actually got hit. For once. Not enough to get her into Wrath range, though, unfortunately. That's S, isn't it? Yes, it is S. And that Wyvern Rider, well, anyone with a range attack could probably take him out. But I would like my other characters to go over here and get... Well, I guess Gatry has to take up that mantle because he is not going to have one round this guy. The Night Ward hasn't really been doing a lot for him. I kind of almost... Actually, no, Titania doubles most things. I don't really need the Night Ward on her. There were some people earlier who recommended that I give the Night Ward to Ike, but they obviously didn't hear me when I explained that it only works on Cavaliers, Paladins, Soldiers, Knights, and Generals. Only Knight-based classes, essentially. Yeah, I'm going to have you go here. So if I set this up right, I can get a triple with Rayson. Because you'll just Javelin him. And Gatry doubles you, because like I said, Wyvern Riders are very slow for the enemy in this game. And we'll be facing a lot of them in the next chapter. The next chapter is one it's kind of a fun one. It's a lot like chapter 22 in that it has a very strange but pretty fun map gimmick. Yeah, I took your Elwyn, so... Wait, that's a... No, that's just a regular Wyvern Rider. Why are you so much stronger? I think that's because of the short spear. You know, I'll actually do this first. I don't know if Miss can get in range of Titania or not with her physics staff. Probably not. And I thought you wouldn't have enough range, so I'm going to need to try shoving you. And I'm going to have to shove you again, but since Gatry can't get anywhere productive this turn anyway... Well, at least, not after he did that. And let us use Eruindo again. Soren definitely took my advice about needing to activate Adept more in the last chapter, but he's still getting it in situations where it's not helping. But yeah, at this point, probably seeing just how powerful Soren is later in the game. Because even though magic has terrible might in this one, most enemies have terrible resistance, so it kind of evens out. You know, I wonder, with a knife, could Bastion actually finish this guy off? I think he might be able to, but... How much defense do you have? 12, and Lucia has less. I was hoping to goad you into attacking Bastion and then having Bastion kill you with a knife, because that would be funny. Because normally, knife sages don't really do much of anything. They might be kind of useful if knives had debuff effects. Because they could at least debuff enemies sometimes, but, you know, sages probably are more useful at... Yeah, you do exactly 1 damage to that guy, so you actually will kill him. Fear not, fair Lucia, for I shall handle this. But, yeah, the enemy's going to attack her and then die, but I guess that's actually kind of in character for Bastion as well. Yeah, it's something of a, not so much a plot point, because it doesn't really get brought up, but, Bastion kind of has a major crush on Lucia, which you'll see in support conversations, because he does actually support her. But one of his supports in particular is one that I want to be showing, because it has what often gets voted as the best line in the history of Fire Emblem. And that's saying something. This game has a lot of good lines. That is one thing that still, like, I like a lot about this game, but one thing that I do think this game does really, really well is, I think the writing is amazing. Just, most of the characters are spot on, the dialogue is really great, there's so many great lines. And that is one thing I definitely think it has on Radiant Dawn. Radiant Dawn is, like, yeah, there are a few plot issues in that game, and the characters are definitely not written as well in that one. I'm of the minority that actually likes Radiant Dawn's story, but I'm really surprised that Jill actually did that. Because 57s are still, but... Anyway. Wait, you're going to get healed? But I think you just flew way out of range of Bastion. Are you serious? Ike is taking no damage from ballistas. Well, at least I should be thankful for that. Ike usually doesn't have this much defense, so when Ike lacked in speed, he made up for it in defense, yeah. And, you know, having a main lord this tanky is always useful. Yet another thing that I can talk about Radiant Dawn regarding, because that's really not the case for a certain part of the game. Oh, really? Did you have to just block Ike like that? Because I want Ike to fight the boss, maybe. I forget if Ricard and his knights are triggered by proximity or by what turn it is. Yeah, Geoffrey's NPCs are really failing here. You might notice that I sometimes call him Jeffrey, but I used to pronounce it that way, but then Radiant Dawn's voice-acted narration said Joffrey, and that is how it is in Japanese as well. And this is why you want to stay away from the beginning part of the map. Yeah, they didn't really hint at that at all. Depending on Ike's stats, he might actually be able to survive against the Black Knight decently well, but you still, and yeah, 27 speed, not 28, so Ike actually does have enough speed to avoid being doubled. Yeah, I need to get everyone away from the starting position. Here's the thing though, wait 10, Soren can't shove you, dang it. I really wanted Bastion to kill this guy with a knife, because that would have been great, but sadly no. Instead, I may have to do this. Oh yeah, I just remember one thing that I was going to talk about with Lucia is that There's a joke in the Fire Emblem, well, not so much community now, but among some members of it, like, when people talk about Lucia, they're like, oh, you obviously typoed Lucina. But the interesting thing is that Lucia's name is only one character off Lucina in both Japanese and English. I feel like that can't be a coincidence. I feel like they must have based Lucina's name off of her. Because in Japanese, Lucia's name in this game is Lucino. Like, Rukino. And Lucina in Japanese is Rukina. Or Rukina. But yeah, you can hear it pronounced that way if you have the Japanese version of Super Smash Bros. 4. It's sort of interesting, because it's spelled the same way, but in the Japanese version, it's pronounced Lucina, rather than Lucina. Now I'm just being reminded of the sheer number of variations on Rosalina and Luma, because every single language has totally different names for them. The only one I know off the top of my head is Japanese, where it's Rosetta and Chico. And the same English announcer has to say all of them. It's funny, when I heard that Xander Mobus was voicing, I mean, he does a lot of voices in Fire Emblem games now, but when I heard that Xander Mobus was voicing the Persona 5 protagonist, I always thought, oh, he's going to yell out all the Persona names in the same way he yells out the announcer's lines in Smash Brothers, but he really didn't. I was kind of surprised how different he sounded as the Smash announcer, because most of the roles that Xander Mobus plays don't sound anything like the Smash announcer at all, which definitely shows the range that he has. Although I think he sounds pretty similar as both Arvis and the Persona 5 protagonist, or one of the few times where I actually like the because I always didn't like how people got mad at the Persona 3 and 4 protagonist canon names in the movie and the anime and wanted to use their manga names, because I never really liked their manga names all that much, but with the P5 protagonist, I actually prefer his manga name. I think it's Akira Kurusu, I just think sounds so much better than Ren Mamma Mia, as a lot of people say it. I mean, I like Ren, but that last name sounds a bit weird. No offense to anyone who actually has that last name. And I haven't actually seen the Persona 5 anime, but I haven't heard good things about it. The animation it looks pretty dodgy. Though I am glad for the existence of CGI students. That was pretty funny. Was just thinking of a tangent I could go on there. I'm not... And that's a weird time to get your generic boss quote. You're not going to get a lot of fame for NPC corpses, just saying. Especially not if you fail to kill them. Oh no, it's Ricard, the famous general who can't kill green units. But yeah, like I was saying, guess on the side of tangents, I was just saying that, I do actually have a new laptop now. I don't think I mentioned that yet, but I am recording these on my new laptop, finally. And it's a kind of a behemoth of a machine, really. It's probably overkill for what I want to do, but I wanted something that could handle video editing decently well, and the fans aren't taxed at all by recording this game. One thing that I do think is going to be helpful in the future is that I found out that this laptop can... In fact, maybe the Brave Sword might be what I use. So I kind of like Ike to take all the experience here. But one thing that will definitely be useful is that this thing can actually record via OBS and not suffer enormous lag, like my old laptop did. I don't count on it. Oh, hey, there's Ike's critical and not kill animation. Which we'll actually be seeing anyway at the end of this chapter, so... Also, I like this guy's defeat quote. He's always one of the more memorable generic bosses to me, because he actually has kind of something resembling a personality, and he has a decent defeat quote. But anyway, so new laptop, and because of that, I've finally been able to get Total War Warhammer to work. Because on my old laptop, basically the entire screen went black during any gameplay. For some reason, cutscenes were fine, but actual gameplay blacked out the screen. Doesn't do that now, although it does make my fans run pretty loudly. Of course, the one enemy that she actually reliably kills, and she gets the unnecessary crit. So I've finally been playing a bit of that, and yeah, I've never played a Total War game before, and I really suck at it. I somehow managed to render the tutorial unwinnable and had to reload an earlier save because I lost an earlier battle so badly that this one, the first town that you're expected to take over, I couldn't actually capture it. Or at least by the time I was able to replenish my forces enough to even try and capture it, it had reinforced itself to the point where capturing it was impossible. So that was pretty embarrassing. Especially when the victory screens actually do say things like that was such a close victory that you probably didn't deserve to win that battle at all. I'm sure that, you know, it's the kind of thing that you get better at with practice. Like I said, this is my first time ever playing one of the Total War games. But I've heard that Total War Warhammer is actually one of the best games in the series in terms of its actual gameplay. Kind of reminds me of Fire Emblem Warriors a bit, and how that's a spin-off, but also crossover, but considered one of the best games in that respective series. Because its gameplay style is kind of interesting. It's sort of, like, it's kind of RTS, but it also... the way its battles actually work is, like, a lot more reliant on positioning your units right and tactics, and one thing that does, that's a little hard to get used to is the fact that your units will actually get tired if you make them move too far. Which is realistic, but it's something that I don't think any other strategy game I've ever played has. So I keep having my guys run across the battlefield and then, look at their status and it says, and it's like, winded? They also run, like, painfully slowly as well because of the massive scale of battle, so... There is a button you can click on that makes them go faster, but that makes them get tired faster. I also had this really big deployment setup that I was pretty proud of, and it turned out the battle was one where the enemies wait for you to come to them rather than vice versa, so it was entirely pointless. So, yeah. Don't know if any people watching this have played Total War games before. Well, you've gained a lot of speed lately. I can afford to miss out at least once. And I say like I said a lot, but sometimes I like to elaborate on points that I've made earlier. Like I said earlier, Ike has exactly enough speed to not get doubled by the Black Knight, and that's all you really need. But I still like him to have max speed. Because I believe that if he gets transfer bonuses to speed in Radiant Dawn, he starts out with cap speed. I was looking at Radiant Dawn averages just earlier today, just because I'm going to need to prepare for making the Radiant Dawn bios, and something that I found kind of funny was that with transfer bonus... Oh, please don't steal my experience. With transfer bonuses, Gatry, he has a really high speed growth in Radiant Dawn, but he only needs to gain speed once to cap it if he gets transfer bonuses, which is kind of funny. So he's actually not going to be benefiting from his growth all that much. And Shinnon, if he gets transfer bonuses to skill and speed, actually, Oh, right, I need to rescue this village. I almost forgot about it. Shinnon starts out with capped skill and speed in Radiant Dawn if he gets transfer bonuses to those stats. Okay, so Ike is level 13, Nephany is not level 13. And neither is you. Neither are you. But yeah, good on you, Bandit Reinforcements, for reminding me that I actually need to get to this village. I have a feeling you get a very useless skill scroll out of this one, but let's see what it actually ends up being. I suppose now is as good a time as any to do this and finally get to say the line that I was saving for this. Zenobia broke, but she was already broken. I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry, but I've been waiting to say that. Oh yeah, and unlike chapter 11, the Black Knight doesn't move unless you're in his range here, so he's really only there just to freak you out if you kept weaklings back at the starting position. Be thankful that this game doesn't have a Merlin as equivalent. And yes, I could end this now, or I'll end this noun as some people like to mishear one of Crom's critical quotes as. But I need that village. Wait, are there any enemies at all besides, okay, there are 2 left. Okay, yeah, there's that sniper and the Black Knight, so really only 1 left. And the bandits are listed as a separate faction. Which also is kind of going to remind me of... That thing's out of ammo. I was worried for a second that would be able to shoot Racing, and that would have been really, really bad, but... Seems like... That's fine. Does anyone need even 1 HP of healing so Soren can get his staff rank up a little bit more? Doesn't look like it. But yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Total War Warhammer as well, because there are, the Orcs are a faction in that game, and I like to describe Warhammer Orcs as if Fire Emblem early game bandits were an entire race. I should probably fight those for the experience, but this chapter, the recording just passed 1 hour. So yeah, the chapters at this point are going to be getting kind of long. Although chapter 25 isn't all that long. Chapter 26, on the other hand, is very, very, very long. Yeah, chapter 26 is going to be kind of a pain to record. It's not even all that interesting, really, but we'll get... I thought that might happen. Well, I guess I'm bonus experiencing you to your next level. Also, come on, Gatry, please at least hit a D rank in swords, because then I can forge you a steel sword, maybe. Don't think we've actually seen him looter with a sword. His sword lunar animation actually looks pretty good. And let's just rescue with the mounted, well, visit the village with the mounted unit. Oh, right, yeah, it was a skill scroll that's kind of useless. So, yeah, Nile is not a very good skill in this game, but it's a lot better in Radiant Dawn. Despite the fact that it does the exact same thing in both games. You know what, I might as well wait 1 more turn. That'll be enough to finish off those bandits. In fact, Jill could go in and start fighting them now, but she doesn't really need the experience. Just as long as I make sure that at least 1 person can get to that point. There we go. Volk will actually do something this chapter. Even if you crit, it's probably not going to kill Ike. I should mention, just speaking of the Berserker model, it took me so long to realize that was actually like a wolf skin or a bear skin cap. I always thought that was just like hair or part of their cape, but it's supposed to be an animal head. Now I think about it, didn't Berserkers in Fates have like a tail? That was weird looking. You're gonna get critical, aren't you? Well, you actually lived. And now they're just going back into formation. Because they don't have anything better to do. And now let's just finish off these enemies and end the chapter. Black Knight is still not moving. He is looking at Ike. Was he always looking at Ike, or did he just recently turn? That's interesting. Yeah, you have no chance of doing much to Nephany. Killer Axe Berserkers, and you just got critted. Irony. And I can't really shove you or anything, so... might as well just do this and have Ike move a little closer to the Black Knight. Our river separates us from our destined duel, but now is not the time for their destined duel. You still can't beat the Black Knight, even though Ike theoretically can have enough stats at this point to actually stand a chance. You don't have the weapon that can hurt him yet, so he's still invincible. Speaking of which, Ike just leveled up his sword rank to S, which is unnecessary because Ike's ultimate weapon is completely exclusive to him and has no rank associated with it. And let's finally end this. I wonder if this line changes if you don't defeat the boss, because the boss is optional here. For now, let's not think about that, and be concerned with reuniting Alincia with her old friends. I think there is alternate dialogue here if you lose Lucia or Bastion here. In fact, it actually works out pretty well for Alincia that she saved Joffrey here. Yeah, we're still her friends too. And we get this amazing song again. And yeah, Joffrey is that one character who I was alluding to. This guy used to get demonized a lot by Ike and Alincia shippers. Thankfully, it doesn't happen as much now, but it used to be like, he used to get it almost as bad as Sumia. Which is actually pretty unfair. Well, I mean, that kind of demonization for shipping reasons is always unfair, what am I saying? Unless it's Makalov. Because he totally deserves it. And Bastion is going into flowery Elizabethan dialogue again. Something I should also mention, Bastion, Joffrey, and Lucia surviving is really important to something later on in the game. I didn't know this for a long time until I looked at the scripts of this game, but you actually miss out on a very good item later on if any of the three die. And I still find it weird that, like, there's no mention to the fact that Lucia and Joffrey are siblings here. Also, great artwork. Meanwhile, Ike has other things in mind. And you finally started moving, I see. If you're a smart player, you won't do that. Because even though Ike can survive against him pretty well, if the Black Knight gets Luna twice in a row, you're gonna die. Ike has definitely matured a lot more. I really like this, because if you have Ike fight the Black Knight back in Chapter 11, Ike is just completely reckless. He's all just like, die, 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 and is being a total idiot. And here you can see that he's putting off his duel and his personal feelings here because it would have got in the way with his mission with Alicia. It's really cool. It's a nice sign of his growth. Also, yeah, he doesn't say if you die, he says when you die here. And I said before that we'd be seeing also Ike got an iron sword just for this fight. Yeah, you'd see Ike's critical but not kill animation here anyway. Seriously. Exactly. Why would you bring an iron sword to a fight with this guy? Because you're using an iron sword? So, finally a mention of this. So, Grail refusing that sword, he couldn't have won with that axe. And this is a plot point that I always felt was a bit weird. I can see why they did it, but it raises annoying issues for gameplay. So, Ike actually had Ragnar this whole time and hasn't been using it. I guess, you know, it's explained here that he didn't know what it was, but still, you'd think he'd at least try using it. And it's even weirder now that he knows what it is and what it can do, that he still refuses to use it until you fight the Black Knight. If Ike had Ragnar now, he would actually be a lot better, and I lost a bit of bonus experience there, but that's fine. So, yeah, that's always kind of annoyed me because, yeah, when I get to this point, I'm always like, you're telling me you had your ultimate weapon this whole time, you just haven't been using it? So, next time, we come to another chapter with a very bizarre map gimmick, and one that tends to be very memorable among people who played this game. Also, a boss who's a giant meme in Japan, for reasons that will become very clear once we fight him.